I am the trespasser. I am not the dreamer.
Well, so this
now another
was
thing,
two conscious people, so it's different.
I know. So, and when I interact with most people on the astral plane, it's a conscious person attempting to interact with an unconscious person.
Exactly. So it changes the variables.
Now, another thing that they told me to try, which I haven't done successfully yet, is stop trying to invade their space, create your own space, and invite them in.
Or I actually think this makes more sense.
Okay.
Create a space that is some place that you both know and drag them into it.
Yeah, that's fine. Same thing.
Well, I think that's more important.
That you both know, because it's conducive to the relationship.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you not only have the heart going in there,
okay,
but you also have the fact that it's what do you call that? Something that's not, it's
you're vibing with it.
Something ground. Common ground, sorry.
Common ground, yeah.
Wow, why could I not think of the fucking word common?
Well, you're operating in a very abstract way.
Yeah, so it's like, for instance, if there was somebody who you were trying to connect with and there's a place that means something to both of you, even if
they would be, actually,
reasons.
And here's where I think aliens come into place. It's a misperception.
Yeah, you're seeing things
if
different.
I drew your unconscious self into a place that we were both familiar with that meant something to the two of us,
but wasn't owned by either of us,
and then I woke you up, you would not misperceive me, because I think that's a lot of what alien abduction is the misperception of the astral traveler that's awake, because you don't know what the fuck's going on, and you misperceive the individual that is attempting to wake you up as a monster.
Yeah, and
as a fucking hive, collective, hybrid insect human. That's the way most people who have had this experience say it in words, not a gray alien. They say it. It looked kind of like a human, kind of like an insect. Now, what does that say as far as perception goes? Kind of individual, kind of hybrid, kind of collective. Aha.
Our interplanetary trip through the solar system left us haunted by the smell of Uranus. This is the New World Order broadcast, coming to you live from the end of the world.
Now, it's not objective consensus reality, so whose anus exactly were we haunted by?
The royal we.
The royal we. So it's our collective anus scent that left us haunted?
You didn't know that Uranus is just a giant black hole?
Of my... of my ass? Yeah, I guess that works. So, I wanted to tell you something that, so you probably saw that I sent you a group text that was like a drunken group text.
Which one?
Good question. Let me answer that question. And I am drunk right now, so here you go. So the text that I sent was, did I send it to you too, or was it just Kevin?
I don't know.
I totally use him for that. So it was
your drunk repository.
My subjective reality has now become objective because I have created a shared experience out of it.
Oh, the whole thing about no.
It was like an encyclopedia long.
You said
way
that to
too
both
long.
Of us, yeah.
Way too long. Okay. So what happened? Harry and I were sitting around one night, and we ended up meditating together. And Harry is very interested in oral phenomena, like seeing people's...
This is already sounding dirty.
Seeing people's auras. I'm the drunk guy.
Don't
you turn into the drunk guy here that derails the conversation. Your job is to keep me on track. I'm drunk. You need to be the guy that keeps us on track.
Have you heard of the trolley experiment? Because I'll keep it on track.
Shut up. And run my ass over. I gotcha. I saw it. So, So he's interested in the ability to see other people's auras and things like that. So we were meditating for a little bit, and we were just in the dark, and we were just describing to each other what we saw. Now we have a night light that's like, what is that? A 16 watt?
Candle, like a candlestick.
Yeah, but is it like a 16 watt bulb? It's pretty bright.
Yeah, 60 watt.
Okay, 60 watt bulb. It's a pretty bright candlestick bulb. I actually unscrew it now when I'm gonna take a nap. It's just really
it's
bright.
a bit much. Yeah.
It's a bit much. So it was screwed in. It was on, and we're just trying to see each other's auras. We were telling each other what we saw. That lasted for about, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes, and then I forget how it happened, but one of us asked a question of the other, and all of a sudden the light blinked. Blink. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because that's one of the sort of poltergeist phenomenon that I experience regularly that never happens when somebody else is present. And I was like, okay, so here's an opportunity to make the subjective experience objective. Let's try. So we started asking questions, just like a Ouija board, of this light bulb.
Sure. Okay.
Harry, right? Every single time we asked it a question that demanded a change in the light, it blinked, usually less than a second, or it shut off for a few seconds, and then when we demanded, or a while, and then when we demanded another change where the answer was less obvious, it would turn back on. And we did this for a few hours. It was pretty wild, and it always responded to us in like if we're sitting around and having a conversation that was just between the two of us, no occurrence whatsoever. And since then, every time Harry closes that door over there when he's bringing in wood and stuff, he'll start to walk away from it, and it'll just blow open like somebody kicked it. Like not slow, like really hard. He had his coffee fall off the table or get slid across the table.
Yeah.
Slid across the table.
Got pushed off the table.
At Perkins, while he was there having breakfast, I saw his coffee jump at him.
Man, I haven't eaten at Perkins in forever, but anyway, go on.
It's not bad. It's like
no, it's decent.
It's like Denny's.
It's
America's
like Denny's
favorite
less
diner.
shitty.
Yeah. So he put his coffee mug down on the end table right there in front of the chairs, turned around, started to walk away from it, and then it basically like jumped at his ass. I saw it, went boop, like jumped at him, like somebody slapped it off the table. And he's been seeing shadows walk around, which I see all the time, but I just don't talk about it anymore. So
because I sound crazy.
Because everybody thinks I'm fucking nuts. So I thought it was pretty cool that I was able to bring my subjective experience and make it objective by, I don't know what you want to call it, bringing somebody else into it, or by having their perception perceive the same things, but that's the way it feels. I thought that was fascinating.
So it's funny that you bring this up, because I actually had a very similar experience. And so we were sitting around in the apartment and we started talking to, like, we had the Ouija board out and we were sitting there and we were communicating with the spirit. And, you know, I mean, whether you believe it or not, you know, whatever. The point is that it seemingly was communicating.
Sure.
And we sat there and asked it what its name was, and it said Alexa. And then every time we sat there and we talked to it, it sat there, the lights would blink, they change colors. It was so weird.
So you were... Oh my god.
I just wanted to get the joke in. It was a funny joke, but
that is pretty funny.
But it's not a joke.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not denouncing spiritual phenomenon.
That is pretty funny.
I felt like it was
also
an
fuck you.
No, agreed.
But that's pretty funny.
I felt like the deadpan delivery was a little annoying and hurtful, but but no, I mean, like, because you and I have had a lot of those experiences too.
Sure.
But
all the experiences that you and I have had are easily discounted as coincidence.
Sure.
And that is a huge part of the psi phenomenon experience, is that it, you know, in the scientific method, you have to have something that's repeatable and falsifiable. And neither of those criteria are applicable to the psi experience.
Sure.
Which makes it inherently a subjective experience.
No, yeah, I'll agree with that.
So we had one experience where we were much younger, and you were facing, they were going to revoke your license or something like that. Why was that?
I had a court case coming up.
Yeah.
Where my license was going to be suspended for a year, which would then make me lose my job because my job was dependent on having a driver's license.
Right.
And so we decided to do a ritual.
Yeah.
And
I believe this was in late April.
I don't remember what time of year it was.
It was definitely the time of year where snow was surprising.
Sure, but the biggest thing wasn't the snow. It was
It was the biggest thing for me.
Well, it was the fact that as we continued with the evocation, the windows over the piano blew open.
Yeah, sure.
And then when we were striking the staff on the ground,
when we started the ritual, there was really
it was
no
silent
storm.
out. Yeah, there was nothing
very
going on.
Quiet.
Yeah, it was a very
quiet.
peaceful night.
Right.
And then during the entire thing, we ended up loosening and when we're talking about a stone floor, I'm not talking stone tiles.
No, we're talking
stone.
rocks.
And
rocks and cement. That's what the floor was made
of. And striking the staff down on the floor made one of the stones start coming loose, like came loose immediately.
And when we say staff, I made this thing out of a curtain rod.
It's very well crafted, though, if you want to throw a picture of it up, if you have one.
I do not have one, but it looked cool, but it's still basically hardened cardboard.
Costume jewelry, basically.
Yeah, hardened cardboard.
But then as we kept going, the wind picked up very suddenly and slammed the windows open, and they were latched,
which were latched closed.
Yeah, it's not like it's just they were shutter windows.
It's two windows at the same time, if I remember correctly. They just
both of them in the corner of the room.
Both latched shut. They just flew open.
Latched shut for years. It's not like we were.
So we're talking, years. We never opened them.
Yeah.
So we're talking like Harry Potter type of shit, where you're saying a word and waving a wand around, then all of a sudden the windows fly open and wind blows papers across the room, like
that kind of shit. Yeah.
You and I actually experienced that in real life. It was crazy.
And we had a fire going in the fireplace, too, and that started acting erratic as well.
Mm-hmm. Started popping and shit. Yeah, exactly.
But no, so, like, I'm never one to...
So, the next morning, I didn't wake up...
After Perkins, we mean, or which timeline are we
we're talking about our ritual.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
So, after all that phenomenon, and if I remember correctly, my girlfriend at the time woke up and was like, you guys are being way too loud. I was like, it's not us. And she went back to sleep.
It's the wind.
Yeah, we it's the demons. We ended the ritual, and you got up very early to go to your court case. I didn't wake up until you got home. But the way that I remember it is by the time you got home and I was awake, there was like an inch of snow on the ground. And it was like way too late in the year.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
That's the major phenomenon that I remember from that whole thing. It's just like, it shouldn't be snowing.
So my anxieties were so ramped up because of the ramifications on my life of the entire thing that
You don't remember driving in the snow? It seems like you should remember that. Isn't that weird?
I don't think I did, because you have to remember I had to drive because the court case got brought from the local magistrate up to the county level.
Okay.
So I actually had a 45-minute drive down out of the mountain into the city.
Right.
So it's like, I don't think I drove through the snow. It was just there when I got back. You know what I mean?
So you don't remember that?
No, that doesn't stand out to me because there was this sense of relief coming back from the courthouse.
So you're just like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah,
and
so,
it didn't stand
no,
out in your mind.
Like, in all honesty, it didn't stand out in my mind, but now that you say it, and like, I don't know if this is like...
I remember waking up around 1 p.m., which is my habit. Nowadays, it's 3 or 4.
And my court date was at 11. I had to leave at 9:30, you know. So it's like, I was away from home for hours.
Yeah, and somewhere between the time that you left, I guess, and the time that I woke up, an inch of snow fell on the ground. Everything was white when I woke up. I was like, wait a second. It's springtime. It's almost summer. That's the thought that went through my head.
Now that you're saying this, I can picture it, but it's one of those things where it's like, am I picturing it because you're telling me? But either way, I believe you.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't. But
my point is that, like, I understand why it wouldn't have been a moment of...
You were nervous about the thing that you
Yeah, and
yeah.
because I was on my way back, I had such a sense of relief. Fuck the snow.
Yeah.
Snow's awesome. I love snow.
So here's the way that I interpret this type of phenomenon, which I think is a very interesting way to look at things. There's a bifurcation in human consciousness. There is who we are now while we're in the physical world, while we're awake, and I say both physical and awake with air quotes. And there's a different person that we are when we're, once again, air quotes, asleep or in the non-physical world. I think those are just different perspectives.
I feel like you could call it consciousness and metaconsciousness.
Which one is metaconsciousness?
The one where you're asleep.
I don't see it that way.
Well, I mean, like, the dream state.
So
that's not metaconsciousness? Which one?
I don't think so.
All right.
So, no, I want to ask your guys, and Harry and I recently have had a lot of talks about this because he has started experiencing a lot of what would be termed
nocturnal emissions. Sorry, I had to.
Every time we talk about metaphysical stuff, you talk about masturbation in some way.
It's easy.
That's telling. He's started to experience a lot of poltergeist since that thing that we did together. He started to experience a lot of poltergeist phenomenon, and he's like, "I saw this happen." I'm like, "Yeah, yep, yeah." They have a sense of humor, or yeah, that happens for some reason. I don't know why. A lot of the same things that I started to experience once it was made clear to me that there are invisible, intelligent, conscious entities that you can interact with, which I studied the occult for over a decade before I came across evidence of this. I didn't believe in it. I thought that everything was psychosomatic. So he started to experience those things, and we've had a few conversations about my theory on this. My theory is that there's a bifurcation of consciousness, and what all that astral projection is, or lucid dreaming, same fucking thing, is to carry over the who am I supposed to be from so-called waking reality to so-called dreaming reality, and then to pull back who am I supposed to be from so-called dreaming reality back to waking reality. If you can cross that divide between the two hemispheres of consciousness, awake, sleep, quote unquote. All right. Now we know we're awake, so I'm calling it awake and sleep. But if I'm over there doing a podcast, I'm going to use exactly the differentiation. Differentiation. I'll call what's over there awake and what's over here asleep. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
it's kind of like that series.
Not in it.
What's the series that you gave me? The people that have a split in their brain.
Oh, shit! It's on Apple TV. It is Severance.
Here's why I wanted to bring it up. You brought this television series to my...
Great series, by the way.
Great series. Severance. And severance, it's a play on words. Obviously, when you leave your job, you get severance pay. But what these people have done is they've undergone a medical procedure where every time they enter their office, their memory of being outside the office shuts off, and the memory when they come into the office turns on. And every time they leave the office, their memory of being inside the office turns off, and their memory of being outside the office turns on. By doing that, you create two distinct personalities. Let's say one soul.
Two distinct realities, really.
Exactly. So let's say one soul. And that's a question that we need to tackle. But two different sets of memories, two different personalities, two different realities. Okay? Now, I think use that series as a metaphor for dream and wake. Now, that's the bifurcation of consciousness. There's a split. Most people in America claim they cannot dream. They do not remember their dreams. And how many people can carry their memories over from the waking world into their dream? Not a lot. You know how many people in America claim to be able to lucid dream or have astral projection experiences?
I would guess 20%.
A little under 6.
Really? That low?
Mm-hmm.
See, because the interior
on a regular basis.
Because the interior
on a regular
monologue
basis.
part of that study is the thing that disturbs me more.
Disturbs me way more. You don't even... Most people in America claim they do not have an internal monologue. So there is a bifurcation of... If you don't have a voice rattling around in your head saying, hey, maybe don't do that, or good job, buddy, there's no voice in your head, you are cut off from something fundamental about being human. But I would translate that into kind of the same phenomenon with dreams and what I consider to be the afterlife. And I'm going to maybe... We did a podcast on death, and I got a little drunk. I might put it up. I have to rewatch it.
Sure.
But it would be contingent with what we're talking about now. So I think if there's a bifurcation of consciousness, a la the series, what is that on Apple?
Yeah,
Severance?
Apple TV. Yeah,
Apple
Severance,
TV,
yeah.
Severance. Take Severance and make it whenever you fall asleep, you're still conscious. But you can't remember it, and you can't remember what you were before you fell asleep. It's just a different personality, a different vehicle for your consciousness. You're living an entirely different life. And they're bifurcated. They're split. They're severed. That's the way that I see living physical life and the dream world. Now, interestingly enough, can you carry both of those conscious entities over across the line, both ways? Yeah. And when I tell people this, generally they say you should go see a doctor. You might have a brain tumor. But I did have the experience of living for an entire year without falling asleep. My body went to sleep.
Yeah, it was just
my
transferring
mind,
into different states of consciousness.
My mind was conscious 100% of the time. There was never a blackout period. When I went to the dream world, I remembered everything that happened here. And when I went back to the physical world, I remembered everything that happened there. For an entire year, I did not fall asleep. Now, most people, when they hear that, will be like, you should go to a doctor. But their second question is, what was that like? Did you get tired? No. Felt fine. You know what the biggest thing that fucked me up about that? Other people being concerned.
Well, I can understand that.
So can I.
Oh, that's all I had to say. Like, I can understand where, because it's an abnormal state of being. Because
It's definitely abnormal to say most people don't experience it, but is it unhealthy is a completely different question.
No, sure. And that's why I chose the word abnormal.
Yeah.
Well, all I know is he was sitting there. I was by the sink, and I seen a shadow walk right past me, full size. Thought it was him.
Yeah.
And ended up, I looked in, he was there, and this thing walked right by.
Yeah.
Then when we had one walk through the door,
Yeah.
we had the full body, electrical charge, walk right through the door.
You could feel it.
And you could feel it. A long time ago, we did a Ouija board out in Long Island. And we were just playing with them. Well, we got on the board. All suddenly, something took over. I channeled into something. And I was speaking French. And the woman who's a white witch there, she knew French. And I was speaking to her, and it was a trapper from 1793.
You were speaking French.
I was being channeled. And went on for like 15, 20 minutes, then it stopped.
That's interesting.
Then they told me where to go, where he was buried. He was buried right in the tree in the front of the house.
Did you find evidence of that in the real world, or so-called the real world?
Well, according to her, I told her where to dig, and they found bones.
They did find bones.
They did find bones.
So,
I had this with my wife, my first wife. I seen her travel out of her body.
Oh yeah, no. Tell that in detail, because the way you told it to me is actually an interesting story.
Can I do a gag real quick before we go into that?
Okay.
Harry, raise your right arm. Is that blood?
No, he mentioned this the other day. That's actually roofing tar. He was trying to correct the roof on the.
Well, I'm just saying he's talking about finding bodies. I'm not sure if he's putting them there.
He's put a few there. We're not going to. Hey, Harry. We're not going to talk about that. You've never done that, right?
But now go on. I'm sorry. It was just funny because
my first wife
catching my eye.
Had such a miserable life. She wished herself dead. And I seen her travel out of her body. About 5 or 10 minutes, and she came back.
Yeah, talk about that. Tell me what you saw.
And I had actually seen a body walk off the bed.
She was laying in bed.
She was wishing she was dead.
And what did you see? Like, what colors were it?
I seen colors. A full-size electrical ball or body.
Okay.
And she came back.
Well, in our conversation that we had the other night, he said that it was blue, it rose out of the body, and then it seemed to go back into the body.
Gotcha.
That's what he told me.
Now, on the second thing, I had my landlord die at Hart Street.
Oh, yeah, you told me this one, too.
He died. They pulled a tooth, and he bled to death. It's an old gentleman. He ended up walking in my bedroom next to my son in the crib. And I actually seen him. So I had a few experiences.
With ghosts.
Ghost spirits, energies, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But it is not bullshit. It is a real world, and I guess sometimes the world opens up to you. So when I seen that shadow walk out there, and you were sitting in this room,
I didn't see it.
And he went right by because I don't think we just seen the door. So, and then when the door kicked open,
yeah,
the coffee cup got knocked off this table.
Yeah, both those things happened in the same minute. Yeah,
and it only happened in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So there is a world out
Actually,
there.
a few days. All these things happened within 3 days of when we did the light, what I call now the light bulb communication. It was pretty interesting. We've had less experiences as time has gone on, but in the first few days, he was experiencing more than me. He was experiencing like crazy shit, like every day.
Sure.
Pretty interesting.
Another boarder in the house. Hey, what? So
another boarder in the bungalow. Yeah. Well, you don't have to feed this one. And I'm sorry I ate your fucking banana the other day. Why are you so hung up on what I'm consuming lately? I ate one banana and a couple pieces of bread. I bought the bread.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, he's so like hung up on that lately.
No, but we got some experiences here, and I'm looking forward to what happens next.
So I've talked about this before. Sorry. So I've talked to Talking Hat about this. Talking Hat.
You're drunker than
Hatman.
Yeah.
So I talked to Hatman about this before. But I obviously haven't told you. But we've talked about there's a concept in metaphysics called lycanthropic transformation, which is
werewolf.
Essentially channeling yourself into being a werewolf. And I've done this in cities, and it's interesting to do in cities because and I'll swear by this. Like this, I sat there and I wasn't drunk. I wasn't anything. I put headphones on. It was an experiment that I was doing. And I started walking down the street, and I was listening to music that was very targeted to give a visceral feeling to an urban environment.
Sure. Now, I think that you were inspired by Anton LaVey's essay.
Yeah.
Lycanthropic Metamorphosis.
Yes.
From The Devil's Notebook. So
I wanted to try it out. And so I just sat there and I had these headphones, and I remember them specifically because this is like the early 2000s, and they were over-the-ear headphones, but they had a loop that came around my neck, and then the wire came off the back into, at the time, a Discman. I had a CD player strapped to my fucking hip.
Remember that?
And I had, it was the City Walk track from The Matrix.
Nice.
And so I was just walking around the city with this rhythmic beat going on. And then I was intentionally trying to throw my perception into a specific place of being. And then when I felt like I had it, like I felt like kind of a tingling almost, and I took the headphones off and I turned the CD player off, I could hear conversations from a city block away. And I could see things streets and streets down.
That you shouldn't be able to see even with 20/20 vision. Right.
And it was an interesting experience because it keyed me into the fact that your perception is something that you can alter willingly.
Yeah. And keying your perception into a specific state actually alters your automatic functions.
And it also doesn't break your connection with reality.
Not at all. Not unless you want it to. I mean,
sure.
You can go into different states of consciousness, but you don't have to.
Yeah, so but I spent the evening, and it was in the summer, so the sun went down at like 9. And I spent from like 7 p.m. until 9:30 when it finally came dark. And by the way, it didn't get dark for me.
Yeah, I've experienced. Now we can talk about that because I had a similar experience. Yes, where you can see energy.
Yeah. And so I'm just walking around and I'm listening to conversations from a block, 2 blocks away, and I think I'm making it up. Like that's your first instinct, is to think that you're making it up.
Of course.
And then you look over and you see 2 girls on a street corner 2 blocks away
talking about the thing that you heard.
And their hand gestures are matching what you were already hearing.
Yes. Now, think about it from this perspective. You always have those abilities. You shut yourself off to them because you don't believe them, because of your programming. I think that's
part of it.
What do you think the other part is? Because I'm very deep into Wim Hof, the Iceman. You don't know who Wim Hof is? He's that guy that has yogic breathing exercises and
okay, yeah, sorry.
Does the cold exposure. They injected him and his students to show that he's not an anomaly, a physical anomaly, with a virus that everybody in the world has an allergic reaction to. Neither him nor his student had an allergic reaction to it. They can control their autonomic nervous system. It's kind of weird.
Well, dude, there shouldn't even Stanley Superhumans, which is kind of just a niche kind of show, but it's those people
Stanley's
have
Superhumans, great show. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
so what do you think other than shutting yourself off, what do you think the other part of why we don't experience that range of phenomenon in our day-to-day experience, which in my opinion, for me, is the goal. Day-to-day, I want to be hyper-aware. I want to be where you were. I want to be able to be that day-to-day, turn that into my norm, and then see if I can expand it from there. So I think the reason why people are not there day to day is because they shut themselves off to that, because experience has to be consensus, and most people don't believe it's possible. Now, what do you think the other part of people not experiencing that day to day, what do you think that is?
So I think what you're saying is probably 50% of it, if not more.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think the other 50% is? The
secondary component is because that's not how our brains are wired, and it's for a specific reason. It's because if you're allowing all that input in, you have to make decisions about what's important or not. Mm-hmm. So entering that state voluntarily is because you're looking for more input. You're trying to see something.
Sure. And that's essentially what magical ritual is.
The reason why we don't exist that way naturally in a default state
is because it's not necessary for survival.
Well, and
not conducive for survival.
And it's not conducive to building your psyche, building yourself, your abilities, because because everything that we do as human beings is about disseminating information. It's about dissecting what's important and what's not. What goes into your long-term memory are things that you deem important, things that you deem useful. So to add everything that you feel, experience to your long-term memory turns into a situation where you're over jamming your memory. So if you haven't prepared yourself for that influx of information, if you're not asking for it, it becomes overwhelming. And I think that's where schizophrenia and stuff like that build into it.
And you were going to, I know that you were leading there, and you were going to talk about pre-AI, when they asked the computer to conceptualize a human being. It had black eyes. It looked kind of like the Slender Man.
Yeah, it was a horror thing.
It was a horror thing. And people were like, well, I think this is the way schizophrenics see the world. There's just too much input. We're just putting too much input into it. It's being overwhelmed. It's creating horror shows. That's interesting to think about. But I think that the real reason why we are limited in our perception is because the world that we live in is the real world that we have to live in is not anymore natural forces. It's other people. So you ever hear the theory that the more people you have in a room, the dumber everybody gets? And this is books have been written on this, mass psychology.
Sure.
Everybody will end up at the mean.
Yeah, you're all matriculating toward what the general consensus.
The average. So if reality is experience and consensus is survival, you're only going to take in the inputs that are necessary to bring yourself to the average of the people that you interact with.
Which is minimal.
And occultists, this is the reason why they have a differentiation between the initiated and the unwashed masses. They have to create a bifurcation in order to elevate themselves. And I think that this is kind of the precursor to, I don't want to say a slave state, but I do want to say putting people back into serfdom. But it was, I think that if you're going to adopt the Atlantean philosophy, that there was a great civilization that was destroyed. And we are kind of attempting to recreate that. Why are we attempting to create a two-class society? And it seems like that's what we're trying to do. I think that that's necessary in order to broaden because you're never going to get 100% of the people. So you have to have the people that are able to do that, and then the people who are not, in order to facilitate your own ability to do that. And that's just a natural phenomenon. I think that's important to consider. That all justification for shitty, aberrant, primate, monkey game, human behavior is really based upon necessity for evolution. It's systemic of a natural process that is attempting to push us along. Because if you look at natural processes, they are attempting to push us along. So let's say that in order for people to evolve, there has to be a bifurcation between us and them in order to get across the bridge within our own consciousness between awake and asleep and see them as the same thing. Weird, right? I know. I'm going to disagree. I laid a lot down, and I kind of disagree with it too. I'm just laying it out there.
So I think that viewpoint makes a supposition that there are those that are worthy and those that aren't. In a certain way.
And I hate that.
And I think it's false, and it's not about like.
But there are those that are closer and those that are farther.
Sure, but as with so many things, I feel like that's education. That's
no, it's experience.
Well, but what is experience if not education?
Education opens you up to experience. Experience is experience.
Experience educates you.
Experience educates you, but without the proper education to be open to experience, your consciousness remains bifurcated. You have to be open to possibilities before you can perceive them. That's what we're talking about.
Sure, but I understand where you're coming from. My point is, like, to me, that becomes a chicken and egg argument.
Yes. I'm saying egg. You're saying chicken.
And I'm saying that it could be either. Depending on those mitigating factors. Because, again, it turns into a situation where if you have the drive to seek this out, regardless of your education, you're going to seek it out and you're going to educate yourself.
Which I did.
If you're educated to seek this out, you're going to seek this out. That's the chicken, that's the egg.
Well, so that's not the chicken and the egg. That's the egg a priori and the egg sought out. So I was taught this is bullshit, and I had to find it out in order to realize it's not bullshit. So a priori the egg is taught, like, let me give you a few examples where the human consciousness is beat down very early in age. Mommy, the wind was trying to eat me. Oh, don't worry, honey. That's just a dream. It's not real. No, that's real. That's real. Your little daughter, your little boy experienced that. That's real. Just because you didn't experience it doesn't mean it's not real. It's real. And it is dangerous because it is perceived. The only thing that's dangerous is that which is perceived.
All right, so let me counter that with,
Please.
That's easy to educate out of, because mommy, 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 the wind is going to eat me. Oh, that's not real. That's a dream. There's another answer that you can give and be like, the wind can't eat you because you breathe the wind. So how would it ever eat you when you're eating it every day?
Agreed. That would be a healthier way to go about getting the child over its fear.
But to also open up the concept of the ways that the world is different than what they're forcing their perception on.
Because they're perceiving a completely subjective universe, you have to say it can't hurt you, because the more objective things, the more consensus things become, the more they can hurt you, which is true, in my opinion. Now, if something is completely subjective, it cannot hurt you. The more objective, the more consensus it becomes, the more it can hurt you, because reality is democratic. That's the way I see it.
No, and I understand that's your perception of the world.
So the only way that I can come back at you is from my perception. So I'm reiterating my perception. So I think that's a healthier way to talk children out of their nightmares and the fear that comes from them, is to say, hey, you're the only person that experienced that, and right now you're here with me. To me, you look fine. How do you feel?
But
you're fine.
It's deeper than that. It's I'm controlling the narrative, and you can too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Not like maybe not with a 5-year-old, but with a 13-year-old, absolutely.
Even with a 5-year-old, the wind can't eat you because you eat the wind.
Oh, sure, you can change the paradigm in the mind, but nightmares are born out of subconscious fear. It's very difficult to alter the subconscious fear through symbols in a child that young.
Sure, but at
13, you can be like, just eat it, and the child will remember that it's dreaming, and will become awake within the dream when it's 13. I don't know if you can do that with a, but perhaps. But I like what you're saying.
At least lay the foundation.
I like what you're saying as a concept.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, you eat the wind.
Yeah, it's like, no, we like.
It's a symbol.
You are this.
It's a symbol. It's you. You're looking at you. Yeah, but we don't. Even people who will teach their children, you're looking at you when they see monsters in their dreams. They won't discount it. They won't say you're just dreaming. They won't discount the experience. It's real. But they'll say it's just you. They don't actually give that same perception of reality to their children, which is interesting to me that the Matrix trilogy never picked that up. Hey, man, if Neo figured out that the Matrix was not the real reality, but then through the trilogy, he gets to the point where he can knock down Sentinels with his mind in the so-called real world, why didn't we ever broach the subject of, is it the real world? I mean, really, when we get right down to it, when you have experiences where you're awake for a year in both dimensions, they bleed into each other, my friend. There's no difference. The only difference, and this is what I described to you and Kevin, when I was having this experience, and I don't know if you remember, I was drunk a lot of the time, which is not to say that I didn't have these experiences. I had them sober too. I just didn't sleep. It's the only difference between the two experiences is one is serial and the other is not. One is consistent day to day. The other, the memory is different. I can remember being there, but the story isn't a linear story. It's time is different, and that's the main thing that I think when you're in a linear time frame of mind leads you to discount experiences where you're not in a linear time frame.
Well, I think that time is the key factor in the entire thing, is because like it's one of those things that we brought up before as far as perception goes, about like one of the best, and Alan Moore, like Cthulhu, bless his fucking intelligent brain, like the way he writes Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. Mm-hmm. Just experiencing everything at once, mm-hmm. and counting down to when things are going to happen, because to him, he's portraying what time used to be to him. He's lost that because time isn't what it is anymore.
In order to create a narration to communicate to you, the viewer, he has to tell you what time is to him according to the lens that you still see time through.
Exactly. And so that builds the narrative of what is time. What am I outside of time?
What is experience?
And I think that's why, I mean, it's one of the few fucking comic books to win like a novel award. It's like that never happened before. It's the first time a comic book just like won an award for writing that's reserved for novels. It's like, no, that's because it's a phenomenal concept and it's just rock solid thought, rock solid writing.
Well, no, I think it's rock solid writing and rock solid perception. It's not thought. There's a difference between thought and perception.
Sure. I'll acquiesce to that because I have no reason to reject that thought.
Well, let me give you the thought that birthed that sentence. If AI starts to take over all of our jobs, how do we create value for each other? It's what I'm good at, and I can barter that with you. What are you good at? So you trade me what you're good at. I'm going to give you what I'm good at, right? And really our value to ourselves. So the first one's objective.
You'll end up drawing porn.
The first one is objective.
Sorry, I just tried to interject levity.
That's okay. The first one is objective. What has value to you? What has value to me? Let's trade. The second one is subjective. I see the value to myself through the lens of what I have to offer other people and how much barter value I can get back from other people through trade. And that's what commerce is. And that's why money was created, essentially also for carrying purposes. Now, if that is taken away from you, there's a very wonderful scene where in Star Trek The Next Generation, Captain Picard and his team go to visit another planet that's just like the human world in the 19th century, the 1800s. And they want to save the people on this planet and take them back to Earth because the planet's dying. And, in the 19th century, money was holy shit. I mean, all you do is, they realize that they're on a dying planet. And they realize that basically Captain Picard and his crew are from the future. And I'll never forget this scene when I saw it. It touched me deeply. Captain Picard and his crew are telling them, hey, we're going to take you to our planet. It's just like yours. We're just 500 years in the future or whatever. And one of the prospectors on this planet was like, well, you're telling me there's no money where we're going. What are we going to do? And Captain Picard just has a silent smile. And he looks at the gentleman and says, you're going to pursue what you're interested in. You're going to make yourself a better person. And that is going to be the pursuit of your life. I'm not
paraphrasing.
I'm paraphrasing.
I remember that one.
You remember that episode?
Earhart was captured.
Mm-hmm.
A guy with a guitar. A guy from the stock market. There was 5 people that were saved. They were frozen.
Okay.
On the ship.
You might be remembering it better than me. I don't remember a guy from the stock market.
Guy was in the stock market. He wanted to go to Wall Street.
Okay.
And Warp said to him, "We don't do that no more.
We don't do that." Yeah.
And he was like, "Wow." But the guy with the guitar to sing, he hooked up with Data, and Data gave him a guitar, and they made friends. And
isn't that great?
There was also an astronaut.
19th century guy.
There was also an astronaut that was like 200 years before, and they followed their family, and the choice came, listen, I'm looking to go look at my great-great-grandson. I got no relationship with him. Right. But I remember that to be good. But that was a good lesson.
Yeah.
What is the value?
What's the value of a human being? So
what's the value of the person?
Right.
What would I do without money?
What would you do without money?
What gift do I have to give to somebody?
Exactly.
I would have to teach them about plants, water, and how to take care of yourself, and how to appreciate the forest.
But let's say we didn't have to bomb ourselves back to the Stone Age, and we were not in a survival society. So if you're going to be transferred to a society, excuse me, that's 500 years more advanced than where we are now without being bombed back to the Stone Age. So let's say nobody needs to know your knowledge because we know that.
So then I would have to explore, go to the next world.
Yeah, you have to explore. You have to expand yourself. That's interesting. I think that that's a very interesting concept. So, in other words, what we're saying is, if you have a completely subjective experience versus an objective experience, and we're looking at a society right now where AI is going to rob us of our perceived objective value and our perceived subjective value, what is the value of a human being? If you juxtapose those two things with each other, hey, machines are about to be able to do everything that you can do better than you can and learn quicker than you and your children. And also, hey, now we're living in a world where a subjective experience is going to be called objective experience. If one person experiences it, that's objective experience, because through quantum physics and everything else, we're learning that that is actually an absolute. Now, can it be fugazi? Perhaps. But people lie, and I think that, and I said this on the last podcast, I think that what we're going through as a process as a species, a lot of what we're going through is the masks are coming down. Anybody who's wearing a mask and trying to prop that up, you are going to be laughed out of the realm. So juxtapose those two things against each other. If you have an experience, it has to be considered an objective experience, even if nobody else experiences it. And hey, commerce, money, let's put that into play. Machines can do everything better than you can. What is the true value of an individual? What's the true value of a human being? I've boiled it down to one word because that's the way my mind works.
Fuckholes.
Not fuckholes.
Sorry.
Experience. Now, it is not experience that builds upon itself. It's not experience to say, I know how to lay brick better than you because I've lived longer than you and I've been laying brick longer. It's the role of the experiencer. Experience. How is my experience different from your experience? And the difference is where the value lies. Now, I think that people who have a liberal philosophy, a liberal political philosophy, should enjoy this, because what it says is you do need diversity. The way that they're not going to like this is because what I'm saying is diversity is not contingent upon groups. It's not contingent upon ethnic means. It's not contingent upon financial means. It's not contingent upon age or race or any other grouping identity that you can put upon people. The only grouping identity that you can put upon people is individuality, because every single individual's experience is 1,000% different from every other individual's experience. And that's not only what gives us value to each other, that's what gives us value to ourselves. And that is one way to cross the bifurcation of consciousness. If you see yourself as so important just by being here, and there's an old quote, if I am born, all the forces of the world aided in that birth. It means I am supposed to be here. And this was basically the argument of the Buddha against the last demon that confronted him underneath the tree. The demon said, why do you deserve to be enlightened? How dare you demand enlightenment. And all Buddha did was point to the ground and touch his fingertip upon the ground, which means I am born upon the earth. I am born from the earth. I have the right to be here, and I have the right to know. So if we're going to take the earth as our birthright, we can create any system that we want. And subjective experience and objective experience are completely translatable through the experiencer. The value is in differentiation. The value is in how we're different and in communication. How we're different is value to you and others. Communication, how to communicate the differentiation between your experience and other people's experience, that's relationship. And there are going to be people that are better than that and people that are worse at that. But that's going to be your value to others. It's going to be relationship. That's the way I see it going.
Hopefully they don't have a closed mind.
They can't. I think the world is leading everybody to a point where you have a closed mind, you're going to die.
Well, I almost feel like everything that's going on is trying to close everybody's mind because it's trying to preserve what is, and because that system yields benefits to the virus.
A few people, yeah.
And
the
so,
virus, the elites, the virus.
Yeah, so that's, I think that's the reason why everybody on both sides has an issue with the virus, is because I feel like the more that everything progresses, there's an inherent emotional reaction that everybody's having to everything, and they're just being told how to channel it by voices outside of themselves.
Sure. Channel your energy to me. I can use it.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, well, this change is happening. You should be mad about it. Or, oh, this is the wrong change. You should be mad about it.
Yeah, and then give me your vote, give me your money, give me your energy.
To keep everything as the same as humanly possible.
Exactly.
And it's because that's that's the thing where, like Republican or Democrat, I'm very anti-conservative. And it's just because it's not about what's right to progress to. If your general platform is that things need to stay the way they were,
let me say this.
You're being a shyster.
I'm anti-conservative because things can't stay like they are.
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
What we have right now sucks.
It has to break.
And to say that you are conservative is to say things need to stop, and this is a shitty place to be.
Or things need to rewind even.
Shittier.
It's like, no.
Shittier and shittier and shittier.
You don't make things better by rewinding
You
them.
do not.
You make things better by choosing a fork in the road.
We have the ability.
You have to keep moving forward.
We have the ability to create any world we want. I mean, think about when you're dreaming.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Think about it when you can wake up inside of a dream and have a lucid dream. I don't mean you wake up from the dream. But I mean, you wake up inside the dream and realize that you're dreaming. You wake up. And you're like, oh, this is a nightmare. I can make this anything I want. I'm basically God.
My biggest disappointment with lucid
dreaming. And
dreaming.
I think that this reality is the same fucking thing.
My biggest disappointment with lucid dreaming, for some reason, I don't know what it is. Whenever I lucid dream, I can only fly by flapping my arms.
Let's stop right there. I gotta pee. I'll talk to you about that. No, because that's a good point. So there are a lot of ancient practices in the mystery schools that would teach you to have better flight, to fly faster, and actually be able to transport yourself. Now, when archaeologists and scholars uncover these things, they think that they're just, bullshit religious texts.
Oh, and we've had conversations about Egypt and Mayans and all that, yeah.
Yeah, no, they're talking about astral projection because they considered that correctly to be the other half of our experience. There was no, there was no, this is real and that is not mentality. There was whatever you can experience is real. So, hey, do you want to fly faster? Yeah, we can teach you how to fly faster. Do you have to flap your arms? That's silly. Let's teach you how to do it without that. You know what I mean?
See, I think the funny thing is that I actually, I joke about it, but I actually look kind of fondly on the fact that when I'm in lucid dreams, I have to flap my arms, is because it's the thing that always lends a tangible control. So I understand, so my mind interpreting things a certain way, but it's the fact that there's a physical component to it.
Sure.
Is actually what makes me feel like I'm doing something, as opposed to it's just a dream state.
Grounding.
It makes it feel more real.
Try this. Instead of flapping your arms so that you remain grounded, but you can get greater speed and flight control and everything, just put your hands in front of you and look at your hands. That's the first thing, because you have to realize that you do have a body while you're out of your body.
You know where I'm always flying up from? The grammar school playground. Not our first grammar school, our second one.
In Oakland.
Yeah.
All right.
Very, very funny. For some reason, that's always where
you start your lucid dreams.
Not always. I've had lucid dreams. The ones that involve the arm flapping for flying always start there.
Well, try this. If you can realize that you're dreaming and wake up, just look at your hands and then point them in the direction you want to go and turn that into a mechanism. That's a very simple way to do it.
Oh, sure. Now the funny thing to me, and I don't know what this says about me as a person, other lucid dreams that I have that don't involve flying, but involve, literally destroying the entire planet, I just think it and it happens.
Sure.
Maybe that's sour grapes. I don't know.
What? Destroying the entire world?
Oh, yeah, because, flying, being free, flap your arms. Nuke the entire world, think it.
But what do you think you're actually doing when you perceive yourself doing that?
Oh, it's restructuring. It's Chapter 11 bankruptcy, definitely.
Right. Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah. But you've done it how many times now?
Definitely at least 5.
I would be careful. You're making yourself spiritually bankrupt.
Oh, it never feels like that. It's a lashing out in anger
at others.
Not at specific others. It's lashing out in anger at kind of the lack of control, I suppose. Like feeling like I have all this power and you won't let me do something with it.
So I'll show you.
Yeah, it's like an it definitely had an ostracizing feel to it. Like I was ostracized in the emotional moment. This hasn't happened since I was a teenager.
No,
I think it's resolved on that level. You know what I mean?
I'm just trying to figure out what you were actually doing. I mean, if we're going to see these things as real, it's interesting to figure out what you were doing. So if you're going to see, lashing out at others, or, the thing that you're saying is unresolved, it's still others. It's the energy that you're getting from others. I'm going to detonate it. What you're doing is you're detonating your...
Oh, sure. I'm lighting a fuse on a powder keg that I see as having been constructed by another.
You're detonating your connection.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I wrote a whole terrible song about it that I never recorded because it was back when I was 14. But no, yeah, the lyrics were just kind of about feeling apart from everything and being like, nah, this needs to start again. Just you know.
And it's not the other, it's not the perceived NPC. I really like what I forget what her name is.
That lady. Give me some context clues, unless you don't think I'll know them. Because I'm usually pretty good at knowing who you're talking about, unless it's somebody I don't know. But go on.
I really like what Jessa Reed says about the perception, because this was a perception that I had for a very long time, that everybody else is an NPC. They don't seem to be able to consciously create their reality. They're just reactive mechanisms. They're NPCs. How I react to them, and then I can predict how they react to me. Very simple. And she said, hey, rather than perceiving it that way, just say, I'm lonely. And I was like, oh, that's a coping mechanism.
Oh, no, and I got you. And that's why I don't have those kinds of lucid dreams anymore, is because it's a situation where I understood what I was doing and what I was furious about. And it's a conversation that I've had with you actually before about building up a wall and then realizing I am the city. You know, like it's just a slight alteration in perspective that changes it from everybody needs to be kept out, I'm under siege, and turns it into no, that's not reality. That's you trying to keep people out while being angry that they're not in.
Well, I think a lot of what we perceive in that realm is mistaken interpretation.
Yeah, it's a lot of miscommunication between you and that which is not.
If you could, that which is not you. Between you and that which is not you. Yeah. So if you can bring your consciousness from here over to there, you're coming from that point of view. That point of view and that perspective is not adequate to translate the information you're getting over there. If you look at everything like Nikola Tesla, when he said everything is wavelengths, everything is waves. Basically, frequencies. Basically, what you're doing is your brain is learning to translate non-local information into symbols that you can
use locally,
which is exactly what you're doing in the waking world. Same fucking thing.
I agree.
Now, over there, the information is much different because you are not, your experience is not circumscribed by the so-called physical vehicle that you are given in order to make your experience individuated from mass consciousness, which in my opinion is the only real thing that a body is meant to do. So when you're looking at non-local information, you're looking at mass consciousness. Now, there are two parts to play in this. I have visited people on the astral plane, and it always seems like a dream. And I know that I visited them. They do not remember it. It's fine. This is the way I see it. It's not an illusion in my own head. I really did visit their mind. I am perceiving the way that they perceive themselves, filter number one, through my own filter of them, filter number two. And that is my experience of the phenomenon. So that's actually turns into a game of telephone.
Well,
which until you see it from that perspective, it all looks like a bunch of gobbledygook.
Well, tell the story about visiting me in my apartment, because I actually always felt like this was good because it's actually exactly really telling.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
But it's actually really telling because it's one of those things where while we didn't have a agreement on what occurred, the things that you saw made sense from both of our perspectives.
Sure. So I'll tell everybody the story about the most lucid time that I visited you on the astral plane, and then I'm going to tell a short story about the last time that I visited Harry on the astral plane. I'll tell you, and I never told you this before. I'll tell you what I saw when I visited you. So when I visited you, the time that you're talking about, we had a game in place where I told you to draw a symbol on a Post-it note and put it on the inside of a closet door.
Well, you told me to put it wherever.
And
Initially, we started changing the rules as...
You tried to change the rules. I wanted to keep them very specific. And for some reason, you didn't want me to do
No,
that.
we didn't start at the closet door. The closet door was like the third iteration of it. But anyway...
I know.
We're remembering things differently.
In any case. So, in the astral projection experience, my body went to sleep. I basically died. And I was in the other realm. And I ended up in seaweed underwater, and I had to swim up to the surface and untangle the seaweed from my head. And I was tearing the seaweed off my head while I was floating at the top of the water, and I was looking around at what looked like your garden apartment complex, except everything was 3 stories, which I think they are.
Yeah, my building's
they're 3 stories.
Yeah.
And I could tell that in the bottom 2 stories of every building, they were uninhabited. Only in the top floor were things inhabited. And in every single apartment, there was a light on. It was a dim light in the middle of the night. And I knew somehow, I could sense that on the top floor of each one of these apartments, there was a singular person meditating, that wanted to remain isolated from every other person on every other apartment on that top floor in every building I was looking at.
As the psychology of apartment living goes.
I guess. And
Which is a shame.
And I asked the ether. Yeah, no, I gotcha. And I asked the ether, you know, the invisible voice, the thing that we're always conscious of. I asked it, where am I? And a voice rang out in my head, and it said, you are in the land of the dead. And, oh no, it said, you are in the land of the children of the dead. And I became very concerned, and I said, the dead can procreate? And the voice just rang out in my head again, laughing at me, and said, the dead procreate like rabbits. You have no idea. And then I started screaming out your name, because I was looking for you, and I didn't know where I was. It looked like your apartment complex, but I didn't know where I was. And every time I screamed out your name, all of the isolated voices from the top floors of these apartment buildings that had low lights on in the middle of the night would scream back at me, telling me to shut up. And then I came back to my body. And then I went right out again. When I came back, everything looked very different. It looked like a cross between what your apartment complex looks like now, an ancient Egyptian or Göbekli Tepe type of architecture. It was very desert. There was a lot of stonework, and I knew exactly where your apartment was without crying out for you. I just sensed where you were, and I went to you. And I flew to your floor.
So is it fair to say in that you would assume that you went to the right geographical area but the wrong presence?
Oh, I was definitely on the wrong frequency the first time.
Yeah.
But I think something that I'm not sure what it was trying to show me something I was not aware of. Because I'm still learning how to do this, and I don't know what I'm looking at. There's a higher up in my order that told me what you're doing now is trying to understand how your brain is translating non-local signal.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. That makes sense to me. So I think there was an overmind that was just speaking to me. I was perceiving the answers to my questions. You are in the land of the children of the dead.
Yeah, you were, like, to me, the way that I interpret this as being somebody who lives there is that you were seeing kind of the conglomerate of the type of people who live there. Like they're
children of the dead,
collective mental state, like things that aren't
together but separate.
Yeah.
We want to be near each other, but we don't want to interact with each other.
I don't even think
that's part of that type of garden apartment community. We want to be close, but we don't actually. Nobody there knows their neighbors. They just want to be among other people.
Yeah, and I think that's
there's a depth to that.
There's a, so to me that's like a collective subconscious version of the location.
Maybe. Yeah, and that's kind of the way that I was looking at it. Sure. So when I went back there and I saw that there was, Göbekli Tepe Egyptian type of stonework amalgamated with the garden apartment type of architecture, and instantly I knew where you were. It was like a glowing light. It was like a sonar. I was just like, that's where he is. Bing! And I just flew up there. You were actually 3 stories up. So in this
Which
one,
I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, so in this one, there were 3 stories.
Well, there are 3 stories. But
you
I'm
were on the
second,
top floor, yeah. And this is the way that I interpret the following, is I was in your perception of where you are at this point. So I flew onto your balcony and I just strutted into your living room. I didn't knock or anything because, I'm astral projecting. Why would I? I'm God.
Sure.
And your living room was 8 times the size that it actually is. Everything was lavender, rose, and gold colored, which is not dissimilar to your actual apartment. It's very brightly colored. There's a lot of...
it's warm tones, yeah.
Warm, but light. But it was 3 times the size, and there was a pit in the middle of the living room, like a step-down pit. And there was just a huge queen-sized bed in the middle of the pit. And you and your girlfriend were laying in bed watching a huge screen TV. And as soon as I walked in, you got up. She didn't. And you said, oh, hey, I've been expecting you. I was like, this is beautiful. Is this where you live? And you said, yep, this is where I live. And I said, hey, man, you got to show me that Post-it note, man. I got to see the symbol, because that's the reason why I was there, to try to prove that astral projection was objectively real. I wanted to see the symbol.
Yeah, it was to create
the Post-it note, to create consensus. So you brought me out, and in my mind, the Post-it note was on the inside closet door that's out on your deck, where you can keep like your extra food.
Which is where
your electrical panel is. Okay. So you brought me out on the deck, but it was walled in and under construction. It looked like you were just starting to wall it in. It was under construction. There was no heat, it wasn't like at that point, but it had been walled in. So it wasn't an outdoor deck anymore. It was another room.
Yeah, like a 3 Seasons room kind of thing.
And I tried to walk into the door, but for some reason I couldn't open it. And you were looking at me confused. And I turned around back to you and I said, okay, you need to write down for me the symbol that you put on the Post-it note on the inside of the door. I want to bring this back to you. I'm going to call you up as soon as I go back to my body. And I need you to remember this. I've said that very specifically. And you didn't know what I was talking about. So I went to your desk that was on this porch room, and I pulled out some pieces of paper that were all different colors. And then I pulled out a pen. I said, describe the symbol to me. And you didn't say anything. You were confused. I said, okay, write it down. And you took the pen in your hand and you wrote a symbol, and I tried to concentrate on it, and it kept changing in front of my eyes into... No, it just kept changing.
That's what I'm saying.
It was many, many different things. But every time I look back at you, you said, what's the fucking symbol? Because I was starting to get frustrated. I'm completely conscious. I'm coherent. You are like drugged. That's the way you're coming across to me, which makes sense. You're not conscious. I'm speaking to the part of you that's not consciously aware. This is bridging the gap between physical so-called reality and non-physical reality, local reality and non-local reality. That's a better way to describe it.
Sure, yeah.
You're looking at me totally confused. You want to do what I'm asking you to do, but you're confused first at my question, and then you're confused about my frustration. My frustration is further compounding your confusion. And then I just end up back in my body. But the space that you lived in, and I believe that I did infiltrate your mind to a certain extent. Not that you weren't inviting me. We wanted to do this experiment together.
Yeah, it was
the space
collaborative.
Space that you live in within yourself, beautiful, gorgeous.
But if you're
absolutely gorgeous,
if you recall,
gorgeous.
There was a task I asked you to do,
fix the door,
and you got very frustrated because you didn't see how that
the closet door that the Post-it note was on was behind you because it was a construction project, and you said, fix the door. And there was already a door there. And that was very frustrating to me.
And
that's interesting.
Yeah, it always makes me question what that meant. That's why I always find that story interesting, because obviously, like, I wasn't cognizant of it. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Good memory. I haven't read, this is in my journal, but
oh, that always meant so much.
I haven't thought about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fix the door. What does that mean? No, the bridge between us is broken. You have to fix the bridge. There's
and
something
that's always how
wrong.
I interpreted
There's
it.
something that's wrong in the communication. Yeah. So when I say, no, I'm objectively experiencing this, and you say, I think it's a psychic reading, I don't think those two things are different.
I agree, and that's what I always found fascinating about the fix the door thing.
Now, the last time I visited Harry on the astral plane,
with his bloody arms,
with your bloody arms, I never told you about this. I went to go visit you. You were laid up in a 3 Seasons room in between.
Man, you have a fascination with 3 Seasons rooms.
I don't think so.
Well, my porch was a 3 Seasons room in your recollection.
No, it was walled up. It was meant to be all year round.
Oh, okay.
But it was not finished. Yeah. So you were in a 3 Seasons room. You were in like a patio porch thing that connected 2 pieces of a house. Like, what's their name that we went over when we visited the Wilkie family? The guy that's
I had one
captain.
of them in my first house.
Did you?
Yes.
Because I saw you. Now, when you see Ganon, this is interesting. When you see the main enemy in Tears of the Kingdom, and he's posed with an arched back because the hand is on his heart.
Yeah.
You were laying on outdoor furniture in his 3 Seasons room that connected 2 parts of a house. Very neat, very clean, very pristine.
So very unrealistic.
And you were laying on this outdoor furniture with your back arched, with your chest thrust out. And I went over to you, and I put my hand on your chest. Because that is when you want to draw energy or memory from somebody, that's something that you do. It's a psychological...
It's a shamanistic kind of, yeah.
It's a psychological pinpoint where you're like, I want to draw from this person.
It's a catalyst.
I want the memory here. So it's like a physical thing that you do in a non-physical space. It's a symbol. It's just like everything that we do here. That's the thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I put my hand on your chest, and you stood up erect instantly, but you kept your eyes closed like a zombie. And you walked over to the exit of the 4 Seasons room to the smaller side of the house. And then I came back to my body. That was it. That was all I saw.
Well, I did have a 3 Seasons room.
That connected 2 parts of your house?
Yep.
Ooh, that's spooky. So was it clean? Pristine with outdoor furniture inside of it? Now, why did I see him in the pose of Ganon before, while the darkness is sealed? That's interesting. I'm picking up a wave there.
My question
There's a symbolism
that was
there.
Before you saw the symbol, right? Like before you played the game?
No.
Yeah.
That's why I'm making the analogy on purpose, because I think that there's, like the head of my order said, you are learning to interpret non-local information locally. So symbol has. So what am I perceiving?
So to me, that particular symbolism, without having, like, you've played through the game way more than I have, but the specific power of that symbol is something that's being held back. It's being contained.
And uproots the castle.
Well, sure, but
I feel too dependent on you.
and that could be it. But my other thing is that he's being suppressed by something outside of himself.
Oh, that's better. That's better.
So it's like that's more what I was thinking is like because that's the entire thing is like the imagery, the iconography.
I always place the blame on myself. Yeah, good.
The iconography of that scene is that Ganon is being suppressed. He's being held back. His power is being contained.
Now, when I go and put my hand on his chest, there's no hand on his chest. So the hand on his chest is the severed hand on the chest is the thing that's holding Ganon back in the game. Well, there is none there.
My point
is... I put my hand on his chest and he starts walking around with his eyes closed like a fucking zombie.
What happens to
What is hand? The meaning? It falls off.
And whose hand does it become?
The hero's hand. But he's not my enemy. What am I looking at?
He's not your enemy. The point is that it's this release. Like
I'm loosening what's containing him.
Possibly. That's my thought.
I would like to think
it's because you're interpreting it.
I like seeing myself as the hero.
Well, it's interpreting things as a juxtaposition to a mythology that is both self-contained and outside of yourself. So if you sit there and you look at anything with any kind of hero,
correct. Journey, that's important. Self-contained and outside of yourself. You are perceiving, I think, in doing this, you're perceiving. So I'm not only perceiving him through my lens or you through your lens. I'm taking a projection that you both have for yourselves through your own lenses and then perceiving it once again through my own lens.
Yeah, you're extrapolating.
It turns into a game of telephone. I'm not just seeing you through my lens. I'm seeing what you're projecting to me through your own lens, through my lens.
Yeah, so even
two filters.
So even think about the 2 trips to my apartment. One is the children of the dead.
And I couldn't find you, by the way.
Yeah, the other is something that's a palatial Egyptian thing. What were the Egyptians super into? Glorifying the dead.
They were into surviving death.
Yeah, through methods. So it's like that's the interesting thing is that the 2 trips that you made to me were about death, but they were about...
True. Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that before. True.
So it's interesting. So it's like, okay, well, are you dying well or are you in the city of the damned? Are you
because when they said the city of the children of the dead, the way my soul interpreted that when I came back was certainly the city of the damned. It did feel like hell.
But then when you come back, it's this palatial...
Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. But still night. Still nighttime.
Still
but gorgeous.
Night and
but
still...
gorgeous and pristine and lit up, like internally. It was beautiful.
Well, and even...
Like no light source. It's just everything was glowing.
Well, and even remember how much, like, the first time you came out onto my porch after I had those blue LED lights around my porch, and you were like, this is really beautiful.
Very pretty, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's cold, but it's beautiful. You know, so it's like it's like the 2 trips that you made to my apartment are interesting because they showed different sides of a similar concept. The fact that you only made 1 trip there to where you went with Harry with the 3 seasons room.
I just couldn't
I'd be curious if you ended up back there.
I couldn't get back out of my body again. So it was one of those things where I wanted to, like every time I have this experience, I want to go back out. But when you're out of practice, sometimes when you get back to your body and you just subconsciously roll your head to the other side, that's enough to bring you right back into the physical.
Well, and even beyond that, like, yeah, that's a practical.
I've seen him. I've seen him a few other times. Well, I told you about those. I've seen him a few other times.
But it's funny because that's a practical explanation of it, but it's like...
I've seen him on the computer, and he looks right through me. But then I come back to my body, I'm like, I wonder if he's actually on the computer. And he's in bed. He's been in bed for hours, so I don't know what I'm actually seeing.
Well, because he's thinking about things he's seen, probably.
I think that I'm in your mind, but you're right. I didn't look at the computer screen. That's probably good in his interpretation of what he's thinking about is on his computer screen, because he spends a lot of time on the computer. So it would have been better for me to look at the computer screen than to focus on him.
Because he's not focusing on him at that point.
That's a good point. That's interesting. Harry, what do you think about all this? You're strangely silent.
Well, you've seen my three-season house.
It's beautiful. It's really pretty.
And
what color was it?
Question.
I'm gonna say blue. What color was it?
How high was it?
1 floor. It was a ranch.
Yeah. How high was it?
1 floor. It was a ranch.
Yeah. But it was 12 foot high from the ground up.
Oh, yeah, about 1 floor. Yeah, 10, 12, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Normal ceiling height. What color was the outside of the house?
Beige.
Was there an accent color? Like your shutters and stuff, where so it was just all beige?
Yeah, we had shutters on there.
What color were the shutters?
I think they were also beige, but they were big windows.
Everything was blue in my memory.
Abu-dee, abu-da.
Abu-dee, abu-da. I remember everything being blue. So I was picking something up. If that's not true, there's a symbolism to that. You know, there's something in my filter.
Well, and that could be coming from you, or that could be coming from him. It's just like with the whole city of the children.
No,
of the
I think
dead
that's
kind of thing.
That's a fascinating way to look at it, and that's a way to translate subjective experience into objective reality. Like, are you doing something that matters? I hate it, and once Harry and I had the experience where we were talking to a light bulb for a couple hours, I wrote you guys that drunken text, and the point of the drunken text was, I have lived outside the realm of objective human experience for 12 years. No fault of your own, but everybody's made me feel like I'm a fucking nutter. Okay.
You are, though.
I know.
But not because of that.
But not because of that. Right. And I've talked about this experience with Harry quite a bit. Like, I just can't talk about the things that are most important to me with most other people because they don't have the same experiences that I do. It's not referential to anything they've experienced. It's not cohesive. It's not what comedians call...
Oh, I forget what you're fishing for.
The word I keep fishing for that I always forget.
Relatable.
Relatable. It's not relatable.
It's such a simple word, but it's so weird.
So after Harry and I had... I know. For some reason, Freudian slip every time I try to say it.
Yeah.
So Harry and I had this experience, and he said to me, hey, at least now you know you're not crazy. You had it with another person. I was like,
oh, shit. Yeah.
Holy shit. That was important to me as dream sharing. Like, if I could have an out-of-body experience that you and I both remember when we wake up and have the same information, this to me was as important as that.
We're such strange individuals that I think that the 2 times that you visited my apartment was that we just couldn't pull it together because you and I are so awfully different.
The odd couple, yeah.
But the funny thing about that is that I the 2 interpretations of your visit to my apartment complex are both correct to me.
Sure.
And that was the thing that I found fascinating about when you told me about it. It's like, no, those are both right.
They're on different vibrations.
But they're both right.
But one's more local to the way you perceive it, and one's more local to at least the way it's fundamentally perceived, perhaps the way that I perceive it myself.
So it's both.
The city of the children of the dead, that felt like it was 80% the constituents, the people that live there, and perhaps 20% me, if I was going to try to put a number on it.
So I feel like, just knowing you as well as I know you, that the weird differentiating factor is that first interpretation of the apartment complex is the thing that you and I both hate about those kind of places.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually shared. They're both shared.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that's interesting to me.
Oh, so maybe I was picking up something from you as well.
You're picking up the dark end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
But this is the first place that you've ever had yourself, so the second interpretation of it is
what I'm making of that city.
Dude, there was when I came back to my body and I went back out after I got the city of the children of the dead thing, and then I was forced back to my body, and I swelled my energy when I was back in my body and focused on you to get back over there. Ended up in exactly the same place.
But it was what I created out of that thing.
No more pond. No more seaweed. I was just standing on the lawn, but I was in exactly the same place. But I was facing where you were instead of the opposite direction across the lawn to the other building.
Sure, it's this is where we
So
drown.
I swelled with intention to get back to you. And the way that I'm
location.
Yeah. And the way exactly. And the way I'm interpreting that now is what they told me. And when I say they, I don't believe in imaginary figures that are invisible. I was talking to somebody on the phone. What they told me was there is no world without a mind to perceive. Every world that you traverse through, you are traversing through somebody else's mind. So tread lightly for you tread upon my dreams. That's what I got.
Yeah.
Including right here, right now. This is simply objective consensus. There is no up and down. This is everybody has an equal vote. That's what this is. That's the only difference between this, what we call physical reality, and where I can go whenever I want. Where I go, other than this, the votes are not equal.
But you remember what I talked about with that video game with perks? This is what's interesting. Is that the first version of where you came to is what we both feel about those kind of places.
Yeah.
Because we both feel that way. It's a shoebox. You described it that way. It's a shoebox that you...
Or a hospital room, yeah. It's a white cube. I hate it. Garden apartments...
Children of the dead.
Garden apartments, I fucking... Yeah, exactly.
The second time you came was, I have to be here. From my perspective, I have to be here. I'm going to make it a palace. And then that's what you came to.
I said that?
No, me. Like, what I'm saying is, like, so... our consensus on that kind of
what I'm saying, yeah, I agree. The second time that I went there, I got closer.
I'm making this.
Well, so I needed to read you.
Yeah, you had to come
That's
into
what I'm saying.
I was doing with it, as opposed to how we both feel about.
So
those
I got
kind of
closer
places.
to your perception, but you were not conscious. What I would like to happen, I would like to visit somebody else in that realm that's actually awake.
Fix my fucking door.
I don't think that would have woken you up, to be quite honest.
I'm very curious about that. I agree with you. I think it's unlikely.
And we've had experiences where I described an astral projection experience to you, and you're like, no, I had a dream about blah, blah, blah. And they're like loosely related.
Yeah, they're tangential, yeah.
But we're definitely both perceiving something very differently that's the same.
Well, but that's why I said fix my door.
That's not going to wake you up.
I know.
How do you wake other people up?
I don't know. I've never actively tried this.
Waking them up. Because if you wake them up, they're going to disappear. You're thrown off.
So I used to be able to do a trick with people that I was emotionally close to while I was awake. And it was I could tell them exactly what they were doing.
Oh, I can do that here. I think it's rude, so I never do it. But you're saying to do that there? Like tell people exactly what they're feeling and why they're doing what they're doing and all the motivations that are hidden from them in the moment?
No, I'm not even going.
I can do that.
Deep. I used to be able to tell my ex-girlfriend exactly how she was sitting on the couch.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm not driving toward anything big and like it was.
That wasn't what I was trying to do.
Reading energy. So the whole thing is like it was a game that I would play.
So you're just like, oh, you are sitting here, you feel very relaxed, your shoulder blades are rested against the back of your chair, your chin is highly elevated. That's because you want to show a slight sense of superiority, but it's not too highly elevated because
it wasn't even that deep. I just literally tell
your left
exactly
your left shoulder is drowning in your body, your right shoulder is highly elevated because you're controlling the keys of the key, like that sort of thing.
All I would do is I would sit there, and it was like very early, like and in the relationship, but it was this thing where just there was a feeling of place that was happening, and so what I would do is I would sit there and be like, okay, I don't even know how I started this game. It was just this thing where I knew that I could win.
Well, this is a way to wake yourself up, but how to wake other people up with it, I don't know. Go ahead.
But all I would do is I would sit there and I could just visualize it. I'd be like, okay, so and this is how weird this situation got, was like I didn't know anything about this, like what they were doing or anything. So it was like, okay, so you're in the living room right now. So it was like a game of 20 questions almost, and they'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, you literally have your head on the floor, your butt is on the couch, your feet are on the top of the couch, and the phone is pinned under your right ear while you pet your dog.
But what I'm perceiving is what I'm thinking right now is what I'm perceiving them to be doing is it's from them. It's their dream. I am the trespasser. I am not the dreamer.
Well, so
now another thing,
two conscious people, so it's different.
I know. So, and when I interact with most people on the astral plane, it's a conscious person attempting to interact with an unconscious person.
Exactly. So it changes the
variables. Now,
variables.
another thing that they told me to try, which I haven't done successfully yet, is stop trying to invade their space, create your own space, and invite them in.
Or I actually think this makes more sense.
Okay.
Create a space that is some place that you both know and drag them into it.
Yeah, that's fine. Same thing.
Well, I think that's more important.
That you both know,
yeah,
because it's conducive to the relationship.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you not only have the heart going in there,
okay,
but you also have the fact that it's what do you call that? Something that's not, it's
you're vibing with it.
Something ground. Common ground, sorry.
Common ground, yeah.
Wow, why could I not think of the fucking word common?
Well, you're operating in a very abstract way.
Yeah, so it's like, for instance, if there was somebody who you were trying to connect with and there's a place that means something to both of you, even if
they would be,
reasons.
actually, and here's where I think aliens come into place. It's a misperception.
Yeah, you're seeing things
if
different.
I drew your unconscious self into a place that we were both familiar with that meant something to the two of us,
but wasn't owned by either of us,
and then I woke you up, you would not misperceive me, because I think that's a lot of what alien abduction is the misperception of the astral traveler that's awake, because you don't know what the fuck's going on, and you misperceive the individual that is attempting to wake you up as a monster.
Yeah, and
as a fucking hive collective hybrid insect human. That's the way most people who have had this experience say it in words, not a gray alien. They say it. It looked kind of like a human, kind of like an insect. Now, what does that say as far as perception goes? Kind of individual, kind of hybrid, kind of collective. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, meet me at the bar. Don't barge out of my bathroom.
Go ahead.
No, it's like I'm saying, as a concept. Like if you're trying to draw me somewhere for an astral, like pick somewhere that we've been social.
Mm-hmm.
That's neither of us.
Then you'll be able to see me as me.
Because it doesn't belong to either of us. If you burst out of my shower while I'm taking a shit, I'm going to freak out.
Good point. And I think that's where most people's perception of grays come from.
It's your best friend bursting out of your shower while you've got diarrhea, and you're like, oh god.
We're running a little long. I have had an incident with what I perceive to be grays, so I could go into that. We'll go into that another time. But I have had what's commonly called an alien abduction experience. And the reason why I can say with force is that it's a misperception is because I've had this experience. I'm not looking at it from the outside. But
no, sure, and I know that you have a particular perception about that kind of thing, but we can save that for another conversation.
Part of that comes from the experience I actually had. So I am not looking at it from the outside. I'm talking 50% from experience and 50% from literature that I've studied. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. This is the last one we're doing tonight. We're going to hang out and go to sleep. So I'm looking forward to ending this, although it's a good conversation.
Oh, sure.
And Harry, I am intrigued like shit that you had a house that was separated by a 3 seasons room. Dude, that's crazy.
And you were never there.
Never. No. Where was it? How many minutes?
Lake Estates.
How many minutes away from here is that?
Near Ed's house.
All right, so like 20 minutes. But
yeah,
he's never showed me that. Let's take a quick break. And I think I'm starting to get closer to understanding this phenomena. It's always been important to me to be able to see the connections between... Well, first of all, it's always been important to me to show that this is an objective phenomenon, and I did that with Harry the other night. So that's important to me because now I no longer, in the back of my head, feel like I'm crazy. But also to feel like the astral projection experience has some sort of ties to the physical world. And I think we did that tonight. That's interesting.
It's certainly an interesting conversation.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break and we'll come back with Talking Head number 5, Possessed by the Spirit of Alex Jones. Stay tuned.
All right, Alex Jones coming to you live. I'm going to lay some truth on you people because we really need to understand the truth of the decay in our society. And it's me. I'm weird and racist. Good night.
Someone is watching. There are strange